What is up, guys? Welcome back. In light of my recent JZ vs RB video, I had plenty of people actually asking for an RB30 video, so evidently quite a few of you want to know about it. Want me to do a video on it, so when you guys ask, I deliver. So I thought I'd make this RB30 video. Just before I get started, this is not a comparison video. It's not to say the RB30 is the best motor ever made. Obviously there are better motors out there. Actually, Motive DVD recently released a video where they compared the RB30 block to the 2JZ block. They got heaps of really good info in there. I'll put that up here. I'll link that so you can go watch that if you like. There's lots of really good info in there, but that's not really what I'm getting at here. Obviously there's a lot of things that I believe make a great engine. Firstly is availability, cost, when it was produced, all of those come into play. It's not just about what is just absolutely strongest. So without further ado, let's get into why I think the RB30 is just the bloody best bit of kit to ever bless our roads. So the year was 1985, Nintendo Entertainment System had just hit the markets, Titanic had finally been found, CDs had just come onto the mass market, Back to the Future had just hit the cinemas, along with Mad Max 3 starring the great Mel Gibson.
My nipples, they hurt! They hurt when I twist them!
Walkinshaw won Bathurst in a damn Jag. Everyone in the world was jamming out some money for nothing. And of course Australia was about to introduce tighter emissions controls for vehicles that were produced in 1986. These new emissions laws included mandatory use of catalytic converters and that all cars produced and sold after 1985 would have to run on unleaded fuel. So originally Holden was redeveloping the famed Holden Straight 6 to do so. However, this Holden Straight 6 had remained relatively unchanged since its introduction in 1948. Receiving many updates along the way of a different head design, different capacities and eventually a very basic injection system. But the Holden 6 was getting pretty outdated compared to what the rest of the world could produce. And to redevelop the motor to adhere to the tighter emissions restrictions was going to be too expensive. And so Holden scrapped the mighty Holden 6 after 38 years of service for a brand new motor.
Oh, listen, g'day mate. Chasing a bloody new 6-pot, we can chuck in our new Commodore. It's got to run it unleaded and have injection all over BS for these new emissions laws. Yeah, fair dinkum, got to go like a cut snake, so maybe even throw one of them disco snails on it and send her over. Now listen, I've been looking flat out like a lizard drinking for one of these donks. There's not much time left, so I'm not here to flex spiders, right? I'm looking to buy ASAP. Also, no other gets to have it, just us. Cheers guys, fucking hooroo.
And so in 1986 came the introduction of Holden's new VL Commodore with the RB30E and the mighty RB30E Turbo. Designed and built by Nissan for the Australian market. And with it, it bought maybe the best thing ever. Dose Bro.
My hectic VL turbo goes.
The VL was a hit. It made more power and was more efficient than the previous Holden 6, and the turbo version even made more power than Holden's new injected V8, making 201 horsepower and having a top speed of 220 kilometers an hour, which for 1986 was pretty damn fast. The turbo version also received bigger brakes, a lower compression ratio, a high volume oil pump, and of course a D3 Turbo by Garrett. It was light, it was fast, it handled well, and it was a serious animal for its day, with the Australian Police Commission even choosing it for its fleet of pursuit cars. This fleet of police cars received a few other performance upgrades and were plated the famed BT1, which we know are pretty damn rare. The RB30 was an instant hit. People quickly started to realise with little supporting mods, these motors had some serious potential. And the little 3-litre turbo quickly solidified itself in the Australian car scene, right up there with some of the quickest V8s of the day. However, the RB30's reign was short-lived, with the VL having a short 2-year production time between 1986 and 1988, before it was replaced with Holden's new large VN Commodore to compete with Ford. This new VN was an Opel-based large car as opposed to the earlier mid-size Commodore, and was powered by a new Buick V6 due to cost. The RB30 would then be used in the Australian and South African delivered R31 Skyline right up until 1990, and a carbide version called the RB30S would also power the Nissan Patrol. However, neither of these cars ever came factory turbo, so basically Japan and the US completely missed out, and the only place you could ever get these motors factory turbo was Australia and New Zealand. Alright, so let's break this engine down a bit. A cast iron inline 6 block, 3 litre capacity coming from an 86mm bore and an 85mm stroke. Now, for comparison's sake, the RB30 has the same bore size as the RB25, but with a longer stroke and a taller deck height. This gives the RB30 a little bit torque, having the extra capacity and stroke. It also means that where the head bolts actually go into the block is further away from the oil galleries on the 30 as opposed to the 25. So the 30 doesn't have the weakness that the 25 has in this area. And due to lack of RPM by nature, because the RB30 has a longer stroke, it doesn't suffer the same oiling issues the RB25 does, just because it doesn't really get up there in the RPM. So you can already see that the RB30 doesn't, in a standard form, suffer all the same issues you get with an RB25. The RB30 has the same size rod bolts, the same size main cap bolts, and also has 14 M11 head bolts, the same as the 25. So the result of all this is a very, very strong power plant with little supporting mods such as head gasket and studs, and then bolt-ons. These motors are very capable of sort of 500 horsepower plus. And this is back in 1986. Even the aspirated motors have very strong rods in them still. They're still very capable. So even the aspirated motors with turbos added were a pretty serious bit of kit. So the obvious drawbacks between the younger RB25 and its senpai is obviously the twin cams, as well as direct ignition. As far as direct ignition goes, there are plenty of people out there that make direct ignition kits for the RB30 using LS coil packs and using some sort of cam or crank trigger system. And as far as the twin cam, there are still plenty of people out there with a single cam pushing right into the 4 figures horsepower wise on a single cam. But if you are so inclined and you really wanted the twin cam with the extra capacity of the RB30, with machine work, these blocks can be adapted to fit a twin cam head, whether it be a 25 head or a 26 head if you want to get real up there. So that's where this starts to get quite spicy, because all of a sudden you've got a 3 litre twin cam RB, which is something you would then take in compared to maybe a 2JZ. But we all know that it's not probably ever going to compare to a 2JZ as far as sheer strength goes. But this is a motor that's, you know, readily available, it's everywhere. So when you consider the fact you can pick up an aspirated RB30E for about 300 bucks, which is chump change compared to like a 25 DET or a 1JZ GTE, and these motors are quite capable of handling the same sort of power as the RB25 DET. They are very affordable and reliable horsepower for the money. Now, we've got an RB30 in the shed here that we literally fished out of a skip bin because the bloke was throwing it out. And in my R31 Skyline, which you can see videos of on my channel, I really tried my hardest to kill aspirated motor, and I couldn't kill one. And that was running about 15 pound to boost and making about 320 wheel horsepower, and that thing lived on limiter all the time. It never died, and that was just an aspirated motor. So it's pretty hard to go past a $300 motor that's this capable. There's not really many other motors out there that are as capable for the same money, so it makes it very cheap to replace motors. They're also very plentiful in Australia and New Zealand. They're everywhere. So pretty hard to argue with that when you're going and paying like a good 1,200 bucks for an RB25 DET, and then you're having oiling issues and all sorts of other stuff. So yeah, basically, personally, I rate the RB30 way higher than the 25. That's just my personal opinion. I like them a lot better. I've got a real soft spot for them. So some nitty gritty on these engines. The Series 1 RB30, or the VL motors, were basically prefixed with A6 for aspirated or A8 for turbo engines. Obviously, as I've stated, the turbo engines came factory with lower compression, a higher volume oil pump, and the aspirated motors, the A6s, did not have that. Now, once you get into the Series 2 RB30s, which all came in the Skylines, these motors didn't come ever factory turbo, so they didn't bother giving them the prefixes. So these engines don't have the A6 or A8 prefixes. They are all aspirated engines, and they are pretty sure they're all just prefixed as engine numbers with A. But All of these motors came with provisions for turbo as far as oil feed, water feed, and oil drain, which basically, like, they came from factory begging for turbo. It was just simply because of the agreement they made with Holden, they couldn't release them turbo. So it makes the R31, again, a pretty desirable little car when considering 3 years ago, before everyone decided that they were worth ridiculous money for no reason, you could pick up an RB30 Skyline R31 for around under $1,000 and easily turbo it for basically nothing. You've got a Borg-Warner 7828 spline, 5-speed manual RB30 box with an RB30 turbo. You've got a very cheap little combo that's really a lot of fun. Obviously, somewhere along the line, everyone decided that R31s were worth as much as S13 Silvias, so now they're worth, you know, stupid money, and yeah, that ship seems to have sailed. But so at the end of the day, with the RB30, what we have is a reasonably bulletproof, cheap, affordable, and plentiful little motor. There are parts for them all over the place. They're nice and torquey, and they love limiter. Now, are they the best engines ever made? Certainly not. But it is a king in its own right, and it will always have a very special place right here. Right here. Thanks for watching, guys. Smash that like button for Dose. Check out my other videos if you're so inclined. Got heaps of builds going on, heaps of driving footage, that sort of thing. Go follow me on Instagram, and I will see you next week. Peace.